Alright, Rabbi Isai, welcome to our Monday night shiur. Ashrechem Shabbatim. Praised worthy is the one who comes to hear Torah. And tonight, Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach, we have such a shiur prepared about not this week's parasha, but last week's parasha and a specific thing. And we're going to tie it in with a lot of things. We're going to try at least. But before we start, of course, we have to mention our donors, our sponsors for this week's parasha, for this week's shiur. Number one, a generous donor from the UK. The UK is watching you. How's she from you? לעילוי נשמת, השם should be לעילוי נשמת שפיקה בת מאיר, רוח השם תניחם בגן עדן, אמן. And also our shiur should be לעילוי נשמת האיש הגדול, הישר, החכם, מקים עולם של תשובה. כפשוטו, he was the first one, you could say he was the first one to start this whole idea of tshuva movement. Because the Sfaradim, they never needed a teshuva movement. Why? Everybody was more or less observant, in some way, traditional observant. When they got to Israel, when the Zionist movement was there and they put their communist and leftist agenda inside and try to make them forget about Judaism, Rav Uri Zohar, also his 2 weeks is coming up, he said when he was growing up in the Shomer HaTzair, one of the biggest kibbutzim, leftist kibbutzim, he said they made Stalin for us into a god in Israel. Stalin murdered, who knows how many Jews he murdered? Who knows how many he sent to the prisons, how many to the gulags, how many stuff he did. He said they taught us to love Stalin. One of the biggest anti-Semites in history. He's up there with the guy with the small mustache. He's up there with him. Nothing less. Not to mention the 50 million Ukrainians he killed and everything else. So, before Rav Uri Zohar, there was a rabbi, same time even, but his name was Rav Nisim Yagen Zatzal. This morning, today is Tetvav Sivan. Yudalet Sivan was his yortzeit. I had the zechut of davening by his kever many times. This past time I was in Israel, he was one of the places where I went. He's buried in Har HaMeluchot. It's actually not far from my grandfather. But this morning was his yortzeit, and our shiur was sponsored Leilui Nishmato and Lezecher Nishmato Zechuto Yagen Aleinu. Amen. May we all be zoche to be chozer b'tshuva. Amen. This past Sunday, I was learning with one of my charutas, what does it mean, real teshuvah? Not you, a different one. What does it mean, real teshuvah? And it said over there that we learned in Rav Shimon Agassi, in Shar Gilgulim, that the one man who reached the true level of teshuvah is none other than David HaMelech. And he poured all of that inside Tehillim. He was the only one, not only one, but he brings him as an example, as the one man who reached Mamish. He didn't just reach Teshuvah. Every day for him was like Yom Kippur. He reached what we call the 8th note. The 8th note. The harp, David HaMelech's harp had 7 notes. But we say in the future when Mashiach will come, he's going to be the Gilgul of David. His harp will have 8 notes. It's a mashal. He's going to reach the consciousness of the world, of the midah, of the characteristic of Hashem that Hashem reveals called binah. Understanding, in the chokhmah, in the rosh, in the chabad, in the mochin, in the head. That level of teshuvah was reached by David HaMelech, and he poured all of that inside Tehillim. And that's why when we read Tehillim is the number 1 read book in the world. Goyim, Yehudim, even secular people read Tehillim. Psalms, right? It's spelled with a P, but apparently it's silent. So David HaMelech reached that level, but Rav Nisim Yagen, he started that movement in America and in Eretz. He said he died a very tragic death from a young age. I don't think he reached 70. He died from cancer. If you would have seen him in his later stages of his life, mamash a skeleton walking. And but of course, he left a lot of descendants that continue his work. His son, his nephew, Rabbi Yaakov Yagen. He's a very famous lecturer for all kinds of people. He gives a shiur every Thursday night in Queens in Tov Shul. Also very famous lecturer. You could see him on the YouTube channel Beyachad. He's one of the main speakers over there. So tonight it should be Lizchuto, Lirui Nishmato, Velizichro, Zichote Aleinu, Amen. And of course we cannot not mention the two families, the Shimon family and the Pinchas family, Yisrael ben Asher, Simcha ben Leah, and their families. May they have bracha, batzlacha, to be continuous donors and to have a bracha, and we see a lot of nachat from their kids. Amen.
Amen.
This list keeps on getting longer, Baruch Hashem. Tonight we're going to speak about one of the most controversial figures in the Torah. When I say controversial, I'm talking about he was bigger than Rav Ovadia Yosef, bigger than Rav Chaim Kanievsky, bigger than the Baba Sali, bigger than the Ari HaKadosh, bigger than any tzaddik you could ever think of, all put together. He was supposed to be Mashiach Tzidkenu. When I say supposed to, Yaakov Avinu thought that he was Mashiach. Not thought, he knew he was Mashiach. Yaakov Avinu. Yeah, he knew that he was. Ruach HaKodesh, he saw. And this man, if you read his story in the Torah, you see somebody that even the biggest Rasha in Am Yisrael doesn't do this kind of stuff. Kivyachol. And it's none other. The secular people love to make him into some kind of gibor. The Hollywood has made movies about him. None other than Shimshon HaGibor, Samson. Shimshon. Sfaradim, by the way, pay attention. We never name our kids. You're never gonna find one Sfaradi called Shimshon in your life. You're never gonna find.
I have a cousin named Shimshon.
You just broke that, okay. You're Persian though. Yeah, but the Bukharis are never gonna find a Shimshon. Shimon, Shimshon, Chaim Ben Mala. That was an added name though. It was an added name. But by the Shimshon, they all call him Shimshon HaGibor. That was added to him by the secular Jews in Eretz Yisrael. That was added. That name was added. He's not Shimshon HaGibor. He is Shimshon HaShofet. When I say Shofet, he judged the Jewish people for 20 years. 20 years he was a judge. And any halachic question, any time a woman had a bdika cloth, any question in Nida, any question in Bedin, what's the amount, is that any question in halacha went to who? If nobody knew the answer, who is the Rosh HaSanhedrin? The Shofet. Who's the Shofet? Shimshon. Shimshon HaGibor. Shimshon HaShofet. And what's interesting about him, all the people we have in the Tanakh, Moshe Rabbeinu, they say he was 15 feet tall. David HaMelech, they said he used to kill 800 men with one throw of a spear. He used to throw a spear, 800 men he used to pierce. All that stuff is midrash. It could be explained allegorically. There's a sod behind it, this, that. But the one man that you cannot make anything up of, that he was mamish, a superhuman, and he made a one-man war against the Ma'atzama. When I say Ma'atzama, I'm talking about the great empire of that time, the ancient Palestinians, or Philistines. He was a Nazir from birth. A Nazir is a Nazareth. A Nazir, a man who promises never to drink or eat anything made from wine, including vinegar. No putting vinegar in your food, this, that, no. Not anything from grapes, asur. Whiskey, if it's not from grapes, allowed. Vodka, mutar. Wine, asur. But anything from grapes, asur. Anything, not from grapes, mutar. Even if it's alcoholic, it's mutar. So that means if they say, let's say Mashiach comes, we're going to take upon ourselves Nazirut. Nazirut. What am I going to do for Purim? Don't worry. You're going to drink Johnny Walker. No wine, you're going to drink Johnny Walker. It's okay.
Who's going to say Kiddush at home on Friday?
The wife. You can make Kiddush also on whiskey. Not a problem. It's mutar. It's mutar.
So much whiskey.
You're going to drink one whiskey? Not if you're behind. That's number one. Number two, yeah, it could be. So, Shimshon HaGibor, Shimshon HaShofet, he was Shofet Am Yisrael for 20 years. Rabbi Isaac, half of the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, how long he was a king of Am Yisrael? 40 years. Shimshon was 20 years. But the Tanakh, the Nevi'im, counted as how many years? 40. How? 20 it says, 20 years. Then it says 40. After he died, the Plishtim were so afraid he's going to come back to life that for 20 years they left Am Yisrael alone. That means even that he was dead, Even though he was dead, they were still afraid of him. For 20, not for what? That means he judged the Am Yisrael, technically speaking, for 40 years. And don't tell me he was some kind of giant with muscles and he was working out and he was picking up weights.
He looked like him.
No, I mean, maybe, I don't know. But the Navi says he was a chiger. The Midrash says he was a chiger. You know what a chiger is? Choloch. In Bohai, a cripple. He was walking like this. One leg worked, one leg didn't work. One day this leg didn't work, one day this leg didn't work. But we see in the Tanakh, in the Nevi'im, in Sefer Shoftim, that he waged a one-man war against the Ma'atzma, the empire of that time, the Pelishtim. The Pelishtim are a small nation that lived on the outskirts of Eretz Israel, by the sea, where today Gaza is. Gaza. And they had 5 major cities: Ekron, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Aza. There's one more over there. And they were very mean to Klal Yisrael. David HaMelech, by the way, which is the era right after Shimshon, his main fight was against who? Against who? Pelishtim, the Palestinians, the ancient Palestinians. Today, Palestinians, we're going to see that the fight of Shimshon, why did Yaakov think that Shimshon was Mashiach? Why did Yaakov Avinu, he knew that he was Mashiach, but he messed up? Because he saw, I'm just going to jump a little to the end of the shiur, that the last fight of Am Yisrael in the land of Israel is going to be with a nation that also called themselves Pelishtim. And everything that Shimshon did, that he fought in Gaza, a one-man war, he went to Aza, he went down over there, and he fought, he laid down the blueprint for Am Yisrael to one day go over there and take over Gaza, and to bring, and finally Mashiach will fulfill his job, and the Pelishtim will be wiped off from the face of the earth, because they're the biggest tum'ah. The biggest tum'ah in Am Yisrael, and I'll tell you why. Whoever learns Parashat Noach, when it counts the 70 nations, Pelishtim come from the nation of Cham. One nations of Cham. We know that the 7 nations of Canaan, the Canaanites, were also from Cham. But it says over there that the Pelishtim came out from 2 different men. So the Rashi asks, how did they come from? You can't have 2 fathers. You can't have 2 mothers. How did that happen? The answer was that those people over there, and I'm going to try to say this as clean as possible, those Kna'anim, Cham, and his descendants, they used to do something, lo aleinu, called wife swapping. This one used to share this one's wife, this one shared, and out of that came out who? Pelishtim. That means the ancient Pelishtim, the first Pelishtim, didn't even know who was his father. He didn't know who his father was. He knew who his mom was, but he didn't know who his father was. Because everything over there was chti pti. Lo aleinu. That was the ancient, and that's the last tum'ah of the erva that we're going to have to fight against. And we have to eradicate. And that we see in Eretz Israel, the PLO doesn't make so many problems lately for the Jewish people. Who makes all the problems? Hamas. And where does Hamas come from? From Gaza, where the Pelishtim are, where the ancient homeland of the Pelishtim are. And funny thing is, they call themselves Palestinians. And who named them that name? The Romans. When they destroyed Judea, when they destroyed Am Yisrael, the second Mitzvah, they called it Pax Palestina. Pax Palestina, the colony of Palestina. And from that day on, from our great American, Italian friends, the Romans, ancient Romans, they've been known, the people who live there, as Palestinians. After the Pelishtim. Now the Pelishtim have a bigger klipa than we think. About 100 years before the Jews left Egypt, a man from the tribe of Ephraim got up and he said, it's time to leave Egypt. It's time to leave Egypt. The Geulah came. As many times in our Jewish history, we always think the Geulah is here. This year the Geulah is coming. The next year the Geulah is coming. Iran has nuclear weapons already. It doesn't have nuclear weapons. It's all the teshuvah. So this guy said, it's time. Paro is going crazy. Let's leave Egypt. And he was the descendant of Yosef, so he had free way to come in and out. He got up. The other Jews didn't listen. Why? The Navi didn't say anything. Who was the Navi? Aharon HaKohen. There is a pasuk in Yecheskel Navi. It says over there, Aharon was prophesying in Egypt. That's how he knew Moshe was coming, by the way, from the burning bush. He knew he was coming, and Hashem told Moshe, he's going to meet you on the way. How did he know he's going to meet him on the way? He was a Navi. There's an idea that when a Navi has a prophecy, all the other prophets in the generation, they have a little residue from that prophecy. Right? That's why also when Eliyahu Hanavi went B'Sara Hashamayim, all the Bnei Nevi'im came out to Elisha and they said, you know your master is leaving today? He's like, yeah, I know too. Don't worry about it. I know. If you know, I know. Anyways, so that man from the tribe of the Ephraim went up, and where did he go from? When you go from Egypt, what's the first country you meet? The Pelishtim, Aza. They got to Aza, and they were all decimated. They were all killed and destroyed. The whole tribe, that part of the tribe of Ephraim, were all wiped out, and they didn't get to say Shirat Hayam. They didn't say Az Yashir Moshe. They were all they all dried up. They were called the prophecy of the dead bones, the dry bones. Years later, Hashem told Ezekiel, Yecheskel HaNavi, go to that valley and prophesize on the dry bones. And from here we have a proof from the Torah itself, that there is something called Tichiyat HaMetim, resurrection of the dead. Hashem tells Yecheskel, look at these dead bones. These are from the tribe of Ephraim. They never got to say Az Yashir Moshe. They never got to say it, and they have to say it. Every Jew has to say. That's why it's written in our tefillah. Could you imagine? There's so many songs in the Torah. Shira Devorah, Shira of David. Why you have to say Az Yashir Moshe? Every Jew, that Az Yashir Moshe is the basis of our emunah. It was the greatest miracle that ever happened to the Jewish people. More than the 10 plagues, more than anything. When Jethro, the father-in-law of Moshe, when he went to come and convert. Remember he came to convert? It says, Rashi asked, what did he hear that he converted? What did he hear? Az Yashir Moshe. He heard Kriyat Yamsuf and Milchemet Amalek. So what's the connection between Milchemet Amalek and Az Yashir Moshe? What did Amalek come to do? To destroy the emunah that the world had in the Jewish people. They came to cool down the bathtub. You know, when there's a really hot bathtub or a really hot mikveh, everybody's afraid to go in. The first Meshugana to jump inside, he cools it off for everybody. Amalek didn't care. They're gonna die, they're not gonna die. As long as they're gonna jump in and cool it down for everybody, we're willing to die for it. Yitro said, I'm the Kohen Midian. I'm the greatest pope in the world. If I convert, I'm going to bring back the emunah to everybody that Amalek destroyed. That's why he's the only one, he's a goy, that converted. He has a parasha named after him. And what kind of parasha? The 10 Commandments. Abraham doesn't have a parasha. Korach has a parasha too, that's true, but for a bad reason. That teaches what happens when you have machloket. Balak also has. Why? To teach us what Hashem does to us when we're not looking. We think in all of our... How come there's a parasha named after Balak? He's asking over here. Balak ben Tzipor. I understand Yitro. I understand Noah. I understand Haye Sarah. But how come Abraham doesn't have a parasha named after him? How did Balak get a parasha named after him? Balak. Mashiach. Because Mashiach came out of him. I have Eglon also Mashiach came out of him. Ruth also had Mashiach come out of her. Okay, it's an answer. I hear it, by the way. But there's a better answer. What's the better answer? Because what's the whole story of Balak? The Hashem was playing behind the scenes while we were sleeping in bed when Bilam was trying to curse us. We had no idea what was going on. And suddenly he's coming, he's cursing, and Hashem puts the Shekhinah in his mouth, the Malchut in his mouth, and he starts to say blessings over there. And we're all sleeping very nicely in our beds. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, you know what Hashem was doing to you while you guys were learning? That's a very big lesson for us in our life. When we drive without seat belts, when we cross the streets when we're not supposed to. We don't know how many miracles Hashem is doing for us behind the scenes in our lives. We live amongst the Goyim. It says inside the Midrash, every day the Goy wants to kill the Jew. And Hashem is mechapeh the charon af fesha, that we should be survived inside the Artzot HaGoyim. We don't know what Hashem is doing for us over here. And that's why we have to remember the story of Balak and Bilam every day. Every day we have to remember the 10 remembrances. And one of the remembrances is what? What Hashem did to us with Balak and Bilam. But we digress. Back to Shimshon. Shimshon, he was a judge. He was a Nazir. But he was a special Nazir. He was called a Nazir Shimshon. He was the only Nazir from birth. Not from birth, because there was another Nazir from birth. Who was he? We mentioned him on Shabbat. Shemuel HaNavi. Shemuel HaNavi was a Nazir from birth. Chana, when she said, I'm going to bring him to Hashem. What did she mean, I'm going to bring him to Hashem? Kol hayamim, all my life. He's going to be a Nazir. Shemuel was a Nazir. Also Avshalom, the son of David, who taught himself. He fancied himself king. But he was a very, very big man. It takes a very strong man to undermine David HaMelech. That means if he was able to convince all of Am Yisrael, and how many men did King David run away with? The whole Am Yisrael was with Avshalom. How many did he run away with? 600 men. Could you imagine such a thing? And he had 600 men go with him, and he had the whole of Am Yisrael. The Sanhedrin was with who? Avshalom.
Wow.
And Achitophel, which was David HaMelech's father-in-law's father, he was Bathsheba's grandfather, told Avshalom, your father left 10 concubines. You want to cement your power as king? Take them as wives. In front of all of Am Yisrael. And he did it. And Achitophel was Rosh HaSanhedrin. Rosh HaSanhedrin, could you imagine such a thing? But he has no chelek. Why? He killed himself. He hanged himself. When he saw that he didn't win at the end, it's a whole story, he killed himself. He has no chelek la'olam haba. And he killed himself not out of misery. He killed himself because he couldn't handle his defeat. That they didn't take his advice at the end. Now this one, a different advice. And so Avshalom, he was a Nazir. And this Nazirut, his Nazirut killed him at the end. Why? How was Avshalom captured? When he was running away from the forces of his father, he got cut off by his hair. So they said, how come he didn't cut off his hair? There's two answers. One, a Nazir is not allowed to cut off his hair. He was machmir in Nazirut more than on his own life. So he didn't cut off his hair. Second answer is a Midrash's answer. The second answer is because he saw Gehenom open up under him.
Wow.
He perceived Gehenom under him, so he couldn't handle. And then who killed him? His cousin, Yoav, the general of David. He took 3 daggers and he stuck them in his heart. And when the Navi says the number 3, 7, all these numbers have a reason. There's a reason why everything is over there. And so we see a Nazir is not such a easy job, especially if you're a Nazir Olam. But we see also in the Gemara there were women that were Nazirs. Heleni Malka, the Queen Helen, she was a convert and she was a Nazir. For 21 years she was a Nazir. Or a Nazira. But no matter what, some say Yosef HaTzadik was a Nazir. He was misalsel b'sa'arotav. He was playing with his hair. And also Yaakov Avinu told him, Kotkod, Nazir, Echav. Why did he call him a Nazir Echav? Because he was a Nazir. Also that's the reason why he didn't drink wine. But no matter what you say, Shimshon definitely is, no matter what you say, the most famous Nazir. Why? He didn't choose to be a Nazir. He was a Nazir from his mother's womb. His mother, her name was Slolfoni. His father's name was Manoach. His father was from the tribe of Dan. His mother was from the tribe of Yehuda. And you should know one thing. There are sources that say Mashiach doesn't have to be fully from Yehuda. He could even be related to David HaMelech from his mother's side. If he's worthy enough, he could be Mashiach. Haraya Shimshon. Yaakov Avinu blessed Yehuda with the kingship, but still he said Dan. He said Yehuda. He's a Aryeh, right? But also, who was also blessed to be an Aryeh, to be a lion? Dan. Right? Dan, Gur Aryeh, Yizanek min Bashan. Dan is a Gur Aryeh, he's a lion cub. That means this one is called a lion. And what's interesting, when they were traveling in the Midbar, who was the first nation? The first tribe to Yehuda. Who was the last? Dan. Either you're Keter or either you're Sfirat Malchut. Either way is good. Either way is good. Now, I'm going to tell you. So let's say the story of Shimshon in 2 minutes. Just so you guys know from the Torah, not from the movies, who was Shimshon. Shimshon, his parents gave birth to him when they were very old. They saw a malach. Who saw the malach? Who saw the prophecy? Who saw it? Tzolfoni. His mother saw the prophecy, and his father didn't have the prophecy. And then his father prayed to Hashem, let me see the malach again. He didn't know it was a malach. He thought it was a Ish Elokim. He thought it was a prophet. And they saw the prophet. And whatever happened was, when they brought the korban to Hashem, korban olah, whatever happened was that the malach, the navi, the malach went up with the fire up to who? Shamayim. And they said, oh, this is an angel, we're going to die. We saw an angel, therefore what's going to happen? Yes. We're going to see this. So the mother said to the husband, because Hashem took our korban, we're not going to die. Why? Because Hashem told me I'm going to be pregnant with a baby. And Shimshon was a special Nazir because he's the only Nazir that could touch dead bodies. All the other Nazirs have to be careful from Tum'at Mit, Tum'ah of the Mit. But Nazir Shimshon is the only Nazir can touch and to be Tameh to dead bodies. That's why if a person says today, I'm a Nazir, it doesn't count. Why? You can't be a Nazir. You're tameh to tumat automatically. But let's say you don't say this, that you're a Nazir Shimshon, it catches.
That's good.
Yeah, you're a Nazir. And there are today Nazirs that live in Eretz Israel. There are 4 or 5 of them that I know of. There was a very famous one, Rav David Kohen Nazir, told me the Rav Kook, the original Rav Kook, the Rav Rashi of Eretz Israel. There's a Nazir today, his name is Rav Ohad Turjaman. He comes out with a very rare Kabbalistic books. And he's a Nazir. You see his hair, it's up till the floor almost. Rav Ohad Turjaman. And he's a Nazir Shimshon. Yeah, he's a Nazir Shimshon. And a Nazir is higher than a Kohen Gadol. Because the highest level that Kohen Gadol could reach is Chokhmah. Keter, Chokhmah, Binah, Chesed, Givurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisod, Malchut. The highest level, we say, is a Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol goes inside the Kodesh. But a Nazir reaches the level of Keter. That's why he lets his hair grow long. A Kohen is not allowed to let his hair grow long. He has to take a haircut, a regular Kohen, once every 30 days. 30 days. Kohen Gadol, if I'm not mistaken, once a week. Once every 2 days, once a week, I think. A king is once a day. A king has to take a haircut, halachically, once a day. I think a Kohen Gadol is once a week. And a regular Kohen once every 30 days. If a regular Kohen doesn't take a haircut once a week, he is chayav mitah b'dei shamayim. It's a very big prohibition for a Kohen. That's where we learned that an Avel has to let his hair grow, by the way. Because he's also in a very high level. And your hair has its source in a place called dinim. Dinim is judgments. You understand? That's why there are some judgments that you need. For example, your pe'ot. You need them. Hashem said, leave them. By leaving them, you're leaving them in Shamayim. Your beard, for example, you're not allowed to razor it off. It's something that's needed for you. Women, for example, they must grow their hair. It's needed for them. They need to have hair on their head. It's very important for them because their shorish is the deen itself. It's the judgment itself. It's the materialism. They need it. If a husband doesn't understand that his wife needs attention, his wife needs the deen, she needs money, she needs for her husband to be there for her all the time, she's deen. You need to give the deen what it wants. You have to feed the deen. How do we know from Yom Kippur? Hashem has a korban just for the Satan. Yeah, Sa'ir, La'azah, takes the goat, throw it to the Satan. You do it also every time you eat bread. Mayim acharonim chova. Same thing when you're married. When you say you're chesed, you're not better. You're just chesed. She's gvura. What's better, water or fire? Both are needed. If you have too much water, you're gonna drown. Too much fire, you're gonna burn. Right? Some people love to live in the north where it's cold. Some people love to live in Miami where it's nice and warm. Both are needed. You understand? But if you don't understand that who you're living with is fire, then what are you going to do? You're going to keep on not pouring water on her. You're going to keep on shutting it down. Once you shut it down, you're going to have problems with Shalom Bayit. But if you understand that the whole issue, and this deals exactly with Shimshon, because what he tried to run away from was what? A Jewish wife. The whole story of Shimshon is running away from a Jewish woman. He wants to marry a Goya. And then he marries her, he converts her. Rambam says he converted her first. The Zohar says no, he didn't convert her. The Zohar says, no. Zohar, Parshat Naso, says he married Goyot. And for that he was Yoresh Gehenom with the Plishtim. Huh? No, it wasn't. Shimshon, I can't go too deep with you guys because we spoke so much. But this book over here I have, whoever has this at home, whoever could learn it, it's called Rav Tzadok Milobli, it's Yisrael Kedoshim. He has maybe about 10 pages just on Shimshon. And he says over here, Shimshon had no feeling of pleasure in this world. The Goya that he saw, it wasn't because he was in love with her, she was so beautiful. He didn't feel any pleasure. He was a Nazir from birth. He had no ta'ava. But when he saw her, he felt that she needed to be his wife. And in his level, when he felt that she was for him, it must have been from Hashem. And the Navi proves him to be correct. Why? When his parents tell him, why are you going to the Bnot HaArelim, the daughters of people who have no Brit Milah? So, what does the Navi says? Me Hashem hayta zot. It was from Hashem, so he could get involved with the Plishtim and start taking the nikama from them. So, and by the way, wait a second. All the averot that he did, It doesn't say over here that he lost his strength because he was with the Delilah or he's with the... Only because of what? He cut his hair. That means all the other stuff that he did, Rav Tzaddik Cohen says, weren't Averot. He didn't do any Averot. If he would have done an Avera by being with Delilah and being with that girl from Timnata and being with that girl from Aza, he would have lost his strength 1, 2, 3. But the fact that he didn't is a proof that he was still a Nazir Kadosh. When did he lose his power? When he did the biggest Avera. When he was Michalel. When he desecrated his birthright. That birthright was his Nazirut. And how did he lose it? First, when he was growing up, he knew he was a Nazir. By the way, Rav Tzaddik Cohen says, he knew that he was supposed to be Mashiach. Whatever Yaakov Avinu knew about him, he knew about himself too. He knew about himself too. By the way, he had the capability. If he would have fixed his job, there would be no Kritmachism in this world. There would be no Kritmachs. I'll prove it to you. I'm making the connection. It's not a connection that's written down, but I'm making the connection. It's in this book, Minchat Yehuda, of Rabbi Yehuda Ftayeh. It says over here like this. While the Jews were in the desert, look at the connection. There was a man that his mother was from the tribe of Dan. Connection number 1, tribe of Dan. That he wanted to be included in Am Yisrael, but his father was the Mitzri, an Egyptian, a Goy. When he tried to come into the Kahal, the guard of the tribe of Dan said, get out. You're a Goy. Your father is a Goy. You're a Ger. You're considered a Ger compared to us. So he cursed Hashem's name. What did he do? He said, what's the big deal, says Rabbi Yehuda Ftayeh, if my mother was with a Mitzri? Chava was also with the snake. He learned the Zohar literally, that Chava was actually with the snake. That means those people who believe that Chava was actually with the snake makes the same mistake as that son of the Mitzri. And he said to him that we're all mamzerim. Because Chava was with the snake, so we all have the snake inside of us, it's okay. And he cursed Yud Kei Vav Kei. He cursed Hashem's name. He cursed God's name. They took him, they put him in jail, and then they stoned him to death. Says Rabbi Yehuda Ftayeh, and I'm reading to you guys this inside the book. Ra'iti b'chalom. Who's Rabbi Yehuda Ftayeh? If you hear my shiurim, there's no way you don't know who he is, but this is his picture over here. This is Rabbi Yehuda Ftayeh. It's at his end of his life. When he was in Yerushalayim already. Yeah. He saw a couple of shindalets, yes. He says, Ra'iti b'chalom. He saw David HaMelech in a chalom too. He tried to draw him. Ki ish hamitzri, this son of the Egyptian, and his mother was Shlomit bat Ivri, Nitgalgel came back in a Gilgul b'Shimshon ben Manoach. That means he was inside Shimshon. He was supposed to be fixed by who? Shimshon. That means this guy who cursed Hashem, that was killed by Skila, it was the biggest Avera in the desert. Why? Because after he was in Shimshon, who did he come back in a Gilgul as? V'achar kach ba benotzri. Then he was the Nazareth. Nazir. That guy, he said he comes from Nazareth, from the Nazir, from the place of the Nazirim. That Oto Ha'ish, Yoshka. Yamach Shemo v'zichro. And it says here, what was that guy, that Yoshka, what was his Avera? What did he start? How did he start? Haya choget Hashem beotiotav. He used to read God's name. He used to actually read it. Yud Kei Vav, he used to read it. V'achar kach halach leMitzrayim. And then he went down to Egypt, and then he learned the black magic.
Miracles.
Bigla Shuaya ben Ish Mitzri, because he was originally ben Ish Mitzri. All this he sees in a Chalom. V'gam hu ben Isha Zona. And also, Yoshka was the son of a Zona. And that ben Isha Mitzri, the original one, was also ben Isha Zona. V'lachen gam hu v'gam Shimshon. Therefore him אותו האיש, also Shimshon, שניהם לא מתו מיתת עצמם. They didn't die a regular death. Just like the original one, the son of Dimitri, died בסקילה, how did Shimshon die? Same thing, סקילה. And how did אותו האיש die? בסקילה. מיתה משונה, מיתה משונה, a weird death. That means if Shimshon, which was the keter, because a Nazir was the keter, if he would have fixed his job, if he would have fixed it, who would he have really fixed? The Ben Isha Mitzri. And if he would have fixed Ben Isha Mitzri, he wouldn't have been Yoshka. And if he wouldn't have been Yoshka, guess where we would have been right now? In the Beit HaMikdash HaShlishi. So tell me, was he Mashiach? He definitely had his job. And what's the job of Mashiach Tzidkenu today, by the way? Rav Ade says this.
To get rid of the
Only the Kritmachs, not the Arabs, not the Palestinians. They're not the problem. The big, the Catholics and the Protestants, all those Bundadile, all the Satanim, yeah, the Pope and the Vatican, all these, they're the Satan of our generation. And they have been the Satan for the past, and I'll prove it to you from the Navi Ovadiah. Open up the Navi Ovadiah in the book Trei Asar. What does the Navi say, Ovadiah? What does the Navi Ovadiah says? And Mashiach will come, and a spark will come from Yosef, and a fire from Yaakov, and it will burn the house of who? Esav. He will burn the house of Esav is who? Italia. Where is the Vatican? Rome, Italia. Protestants were converted from who? From Germany. Germany from Italy. They're all the same Zevel. They all have to be wiped out. That Oto Ha'ish has to be wiped out before, and Shimshon could have done that. Because he had his neshama. That means, if I put that neshama into a regular Jew, what's going to happen to him? He's litcharfen, he's going to go crazy. He's himself going to go crazy. But Shimshon, because he was a Nazir, and he had natural keter on him, he could have overcame it. But what happened? He fell. What did he fall in? Assimilation. In Delilah. Why did he marry Delilah? He married her, by the way. It didn't say that he was with her, not as a zebra. It said he married her. Vayikach, it says, and he took her. Yikach is Lashon Kiddushin. Lashon Kiddushin. Ki yikach ish isha. Shimshon married Delilah. Why did he marry her? You know who Delilah was, says the Ari HaKadosh in Sefer HaLikutim? Delilah was Chava Rishona. Adam HaRishon had 2 wives, not 1. He had Chava Rishona, Lamed Yud Tov, which I don't know why there are Jews today that call their kids in this name. And there was a second wife called Chava. And that's why Yaakov married 2 sisters. That Lamed Yud Tov, Lily, with a T at the end, was Leah. But this time Leah was Bikdusha. Rachel was Chava. Rachel was Chava. 2 wives. Shimshon, says the Ari, who Nefesh Adam HaRishon in Sefer HaLikutim. He was the Nefesh of Adam HaRishon. He was the Gilgul of Adam. So he said, I have to fix the sin of Adam HaRishon. So I have to go, what was the sin? Not Chava. The first one, I have to go back to the beginning. I have to find the Lamed Yud Tov. And who was she? Delilah. And guess what's the same name? Lamed Yud, but with a Dalet. But guess what? The letter Dalet could be the letter Tov, because Dalet is 4, Mem is 40, and Tov is 400. The letter Tov could be 40, could be 4. Delilah and Lamed Yud Tov is the same name. Delilah was who? The first Chava. And but this time, she thought she will help him fix it. Don't think that Shimshon fell just like that. He was fighting her for 20 years. He was fighting her. The Tzaddik HaKohen, he says over here, don't think Mashiach Hashem, Shimshon, he married her, she convinced him to tell his secret, and boom, he was gone. 20 years he was fighting her. 20 years, you know what kind of nisyonot he went through? Things you can't imagine. He calls him Kedosh Hashem. He calls him over here, Kedosh Hashem. But he says over here, how did Delilah fall? Not with wine. Did you ever see that over here that Shimshon drank wine?
No.
What was Adam Arishon's sin? Wine. That she took the wine, the grapes, and she put it in the cup and she gave it to Adam. Shimshon was very careful. He didn't tell Delilah, give me wine. Why? Because if she's going to make me fall, at least there won't be the same sin as I originally fell. I originally fell with wine, with alcohol. I'm not going to fall this time with alcohol. I'll tell her about the hair. Why? Rav Tzadok HaKohen says, he thought once the hair gets cut, it'll grow again. So even if I won't be a Nazir for some time, it'll still cut. And it did. He was right. It did come back. How did he get his strength at the end? It says in the Navi, his hair started to grow again. Once he felt it again, the Kedusha of Keter went back in him, and he broke the whole thing down. So in that case, he did fix Adam Arishon with the wine. And not only that, the Ari HaKadosh says, he was also Nadav and Avihu. Not Avihu, but Nadav. What was the sin of Nadav and Avihu, Gabriel? They went into Kodesh HaKodashim, where? How? Drunk. And he fixed that by not getting drunk. But he messed the second part of the hair, of the Keter, of the Nazir's hair. How did Delilah fall? How did the Plishtim, the princes of the Plishtim, convince her to make her fall? It's the story of every man's life. Every married man's life goes through this. How? Parnasa. They came to her and they said, oh, you need money. Your husband is a Sanhedrin. It says over here in the Navi, I'm going to tell you a crazy Rashi over here. It says over here that when Shimshon was about to die, he was about to die and he was blind. They cut out his eyes. They took 2 skewers and they popped out his eyes. He said to Hashem, leave me one eye for Olam Haba. One eye, give me the reward for it over here. So Hashem told him, Kiviyachol, what's the reward? He said, I want to take the whole thing down with me. Give me the power to break down the whole Colosseum. And they said over there that moment when he broke it down, they said over there that he said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, give me the nikama from the Plishtim. Give me the revenge from the Plishtim. Not for my sake, for your sake. And you know what's amazing about him? Shimshon, he never ever took Am Yisrael with him to war. He had a one-man war. Why? Sfirat HaKeter is a one-man war. It's a one-man Sfirah. He doesn't need anything. He doesn't need Chokhmah, doesn't need Binah, doesn't need Chesed. He's Keter. He has everything inside of him. But what was Delilah's problem? What did she want? Money. They came to her and they said, we're going to give you 1,100 Zuzim. Let's call it Zuzim. She heard the money. First, she didn't listen to them. But when she heard the money, what's the problem? What are they going to do to him already? What are they going to do to him already? So they're not going to have somebody to fight against. She took the money. She gave him a haircut. And what happened to him? He lost all of his power. Not because he was somebody strong, because he lost the Nizirut. He lost the Keter. He lost the power. How did he do it? He said over a secret. Sometimes when you have a secret in life, you're not allowed to say it over to people. You're not allowed to say it over to people. You can't tell everything over to everybody. Learn to keep something inside, private. Learn to be a bit private in life. Learn what to say. What did he do? And why did he say it to her? You know why he said it? You can't say the story of Shimshon without being a bit graphic. When she was with him, when she was being intimate with him, every time it came time for him to reach his, right? She would get out of the bed. She would leave him in limbo, like this. Not one time, not 2 times, 20 years. I'm telling you it was 20 years. Every time until, it says over here, I want to see the pasuk to you because you're going to hear the pasuk, you're going to go crazy. It says over here, Vayehi, and behold, Vayehi is always something bad is coming. Ki hitzika lo bidvareha. She made him crazy with her words. You know, sometimes they get under the skin. Kol hayamim. Why? What's kol hayamim? All the days. V'te'altzehu. What's v'te'altzehu? She slipped from under him. But ta'altzehu, for my Otzrot and Sha'arei Orah guys, what's the word ta'altzehu? What word is it in the 4 olamot? Atzilut. She took away his atzilut. She took away his keter. V'tiktsar nasho lamut. And he wanted to kill himself. Look how she brought down the man who was supposed to be Mashiach Hashem for money. It was all for money. It says, Rav Tzadok says, don't take the story, take it for its face value. It was all about money. If she wasn't for the money, if they wouldn't have bribed her, she wouldn't have done that to him. And Rav Tzadok HaKohen says, there's 3 major ta'avot in this world. Woman, money, and food. He says, food and woman you could overcome. A man could overcome it. But there's one ta'ava, it'll always be a little bit inside of you. Always. It's money. You need parnasa. You want the money. You need the money. It's hard for you to give that tzedakah. It's hard for you to give to your tzedakah doesn't only mean money. It also means from your time. To your spouse, to your kids, to everybody, to give to them. Yes or no? But ta'altzeu, she broke him. Why? When she didn't give him what he needed, he couldn't teach Torah. He was a Rosh Yeshiva. Not a Rosh Yeshiva. He could have put all the Chachamim of our generation in his back pocket. He was a Shofet, Rabbi Isa. He says, Nazir. There was no other Nazir in his level. And vayaged la et kol libo. What did he do? He told her everything in his heart. Says Rav Tzadok HaKohen, he told her his deepest secrets. She didn't just because he trusted her. She was his wife.
She made him crazy.
She was his wife. He trusted her. From here we learn, when a person gets married, when you're married, you have to trust your spouse. In his case, it was his downfall because she was a Goya originally. When you marry somebody, she comes from Kiddusha, you have to be able to trust the person and let them inside your space. It didn't work for him. She made him fall at the end. He died. And the Zohar says bad things about him. But the Tzaddik HaKohen says, don't you ever take the words of the Zohar that literal. Because he was Kodesh Kodashim. He was the Kodesh HaKodashim of that generation. And his tikkun, he was the tikkun of the sons of Aaron HaKohen, Nadav and Avihu. Nadav specifically. It says that I'm not, you could come after the shiur, look inside the book. It says he was the Gilgul of Nadav. And not only that, says Rav Eliezer Eskeri in his book Sodei Razia, the Bala Rokeach, he was also the Gilgul of Yefet. Yefet, Shem, Cham, and Yefet, all the European problems, the Germans, who are they? The sons of? He could have fixed everybody. He would have. But he fell because his wife fell, Bebetza Kesef. Okay, the Zuzim. He could have even fixed the nefesh of the Mitzri. There would have been no Kritmachism today. But he didn't. It's a big lesson for us. The story of Shimshon is the lesson of a man that was the great, probably it was the greatest man to ever live. It could have been. True superhuman strength. A Nazir from birth. The holiest of holies. And he fell. But still, I want to read you the Rashi one more time and we'll end with this. Rashi says, right before he was about to die, how did he die? They took him as a clown. You know how back in the day they had court jesters? They parade him around, they throw tomatoes at him and lettuce, and they make him like a clown. He was blind. And he said to Hashem, Zochreni, right before, he felt his hair started to grow. Hashem wouldn't have done that to him if he wasn't a tzaddik. He said to the boy, take me to the foundation, take me to the columns that are holding up to the Colosseum. He took him to the pillars. He said to Hashem, Zochreni na, remember me. Says Rashi, you have to learn Rashi. Zachor 20 shana, remember 20 years. Sheshafateti et Yisrael, that I was a judge on Israel. What, you think all day he was running after Palestinian girls? He was a Shofet of Israel for 20 years. Velo amarti la'achad mehem, and I would never even dare tell a Jew Ha'aver li makel mimakom lemakom. Take my staff, it's on the corner of the room. Give it to me, I need to get up. That's higher than Moshe Rabbeinu. That's higher than Shmuel HaNavi. Moshe said, I never asked for payment. Shmuel said, I never asked for payment. Shimshon said, I never even asked for a favor. That's not a tzaddik. And then he said, Nakom echad b'shtei enai. Take out one of my eyes. Revenge one of my eyes. Says Rashi, V'sachar ha'ayin ha'sheni, the second eye, Hanachni le'olam haba. Leave it for me le'olam haba. Yeh ratzon שנזכה בזאת השם יתברך, לזכות to the real משיח צדקנו, the real כתר, במהרה בימינו, בברכה, בפרנסה, באמיתות העניין, בשפע רב, שלום בית, הצלחה, ברכה, וכל הישועות, וכן יעצום ונאמר, רבי חנן, אומר כאשר אומר רצה, הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות